Hi everyone, you're watching The Caffeinated Corporate Lawyer, where we try to make meaningful content to help you better understand the intricacies of corporate law. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fine and are adequately caffeinated because today we are going through 6 more definitions of Section 2 of the Companies Act 2013. This is the third part video of Section 2, and by the end of this video, we would have covered 18 out of 94 definitions which are given under this section. We will cover the remaining definitions of Section 2 of the Companies Act 2013 as and when we come across those terms in the relevant sections. Today we are going to look at the definitions of share, authorized capital, called up capital, issued capital, paid up share capital, and subscribed capital. You can find the timeline below to directly jump to the relevant definition or relevant portion of the video that you want to watch. Before we begin, let's understand a few basic concepts. What do you mean by the term capital? What are the ways in which a company can raise capital, and what do you exactly mean by that? This is a pertinent question that you need to ask before we look at the definitions. So every company needs funds or cash to start its operations, which is what we mean by the term capital or financial capital. Of course, capital in economic terms can also mean human capital or labor capital, but over here we mean capital to be financial capital or money. The second question that we want to address is what are the capital needs of a company? Well, the capital requirements can range anywhere between long-term capital to short-term capital needed by the company depending on the immediate or the future requirements of funds by the company. In flowchart 1, we can see that the capital requirements of a company can be divided into 3 categories: long-term capital, medium-term capital, and short-term capital based on the utilization of such funds in the long run, medium run, and short run. Additionally, capital can also be categorized as fixed capital and working capital. Fixed capital is the long-term capital requirement of the company, which essentially means the money which is required by the company to invest in the building of its assets or developing its infrastructure. For example, assets would include buying land to set up a base to construct a factory and money spent on buying machineries. This is called fixed capital. Working capital, on the other hand, is the short-term capital requirement of the company, which refers to the money which is utilized by the company to function and run its operation on a day-to-day basis. So the next question is, what are the ways in which a company can raise capital to run its operations? Broadly, there are 2 ways in which a company can raise capital when it wants to expand, diversify, or to fund its operations. First is by issuing shares, which is also called equity financing or financial investment, which refers to the process where the company issues shares to potential investors and raises money. So, a company may issue equity shares or preference shares to raise funds. And the second is by way of taking a loan, which is referred to as debt financing, where the company borrows money and agrees to pay the principal amount back along with the interest on a specified date. So, the company can raise capital by way of issue of debentures or by way of procuring loans from public financial institutions or commercial banks. Within these 2 broad categories, there are various methods by which a company can raise capital. We can see flowchart 3 to get an overview of the same as to which are the routes through which a company can raise funds depending on their long-term, medium-term, and short-term capital requirements. We will discuss all these methods later on in depth. Now that we have a sense of how a company raises capital to meet its capital requirements, let's begin with the definition of authorized share capital, which is defined under Section 2, Clause 8 of the Companies Act 2013. Authorized capital or nominal capital means such capital as is authorized by the memorandum of a company to be the maximum amount of share capital of the company. If you guys can recall, we had discussed in the second part video of Section 2 that memorandum or memorandum of association is the charter document of the company which defines and confines the powers of the company. Section 4 of the Companies Act 2013 requires the memorandum of association of a company to contain 7 clauses. One of the clauses of the memorandum is the capital clause, which puts a limit on the total amount of money which can be raised by the company in its lifetime by issuing its shares. Essentially, what this means is that during the formation of the company, a certain amount is stated in the capital clause and the company cannot raise money by way of issuing shares of a value over and above that amount. For instance, suppose the authorized share capital as per the capital clause of the Memorandum of Association of ABC Limited is 100 crore rupees. Then the said public company cannot raise money by issuance of shares of a value which is more than 100 crore rupees. So the company would be authorized to issue shares worth 100 crore rupees. So this is what we mean by the term authorized capital. Now, suppose that the company wants to raise money over and above the limit of authorized share capital as specified under the capital clause. Then in that case, the company would be required to alter its memorandum of association and increase the amount of the authorized share capital as given under its capital clause. Now, what do we mean by the term share, which is covered under Section 2, Clause 84 of the Companies Act 2013? Section 2, Clause 84 defines share, which means a share in the share capital of a company and includes stock. Essentially, share is the unit of measure of a shareholder's interest in the total share capital of the company. Let's see flowchart 1 to understand it. For instance, suppose that the authorized share capital of XYZ Private Limited company is 10 lakh rupees and the issued share capital of XYZ Private Limited company is rupees 5 lakhs, which is divided into 50,000 shares and the face value of each share is rupees 10. Now, if A is holding 10,000 shares of the said private limited company, then this implies that the total value of the shares held by A is equal to rupees 1 lakh, or in other words, he has 20% shareholding in the company's issued share capital. So, here we can see that XYZ Private Limited company cannot raise funds by way of issuance of shares over and above 10 lakh rupees because of the fact that the authorized share capital of the company is fixed by the capital clause of its memorandum of association at 10 lakh rupees. Secondly, the share value of A in the total share capital is equivalent to 1 lakh rupees by virtue of him holding 10,000 shares in the company. So share is basically a yardstick to see the interest of the shareholder in the company measured by a sum of money. Additionally, it's not just a sum of money but a bundle of rights and obligations. For instance, it gives the right to the shareholder to participate in the profits of the company while the company is a going concern by way of payment of dividend. Secondly, the shareholder also has the right to participate in the assets of the company in the event of winding up of the company. With respect to liability, the shareholder's liability is limited to the face value of the shares held by him. So for instance, in the above mentioned example, the liability of A towards XYZ Private Limited company would be equivalent to the face value of shares held by him. Since he is holding 10,000 shares and the face value of each share is rupees 10, so his total liability would amount to rupees 1 lakh rupees. Now, in Commissioner of Income Tax versus Standard Vacuum Oil Company, the Supreme Court had observed that by a share in a company is meant not any sum of money but an interest measured by a sum of money and made up of diverse rights conferred on its holders by the articles of the company, which constitute a contract between him and the company. Thus, to sum up, we can say that a share is the expression of interest of the shareholder in the total share capital of the company and also defines his legal relationship with the company. Now, let's see the definition of issued capital, which is given under Section 2, Clause 50 of the Companies Act 2013. It says, issued capital means such capital as the company issues from time to time for subscription. This basically means the total value of the share capital that has been issued by the company. If we look at flowchart 1, the authorized share capital of the company is rupees 10 lakhs, where the face value of each share is rupees 10. This does not mean that XYZ has to necessarily issue all 1 lakh shares of face value 10 each, that is, issue the whole of its authorized share capital all at once. Usually, companies issue that part of the authorized share capital that would be sufficient to meet its capital requirements demand. So, for instance, in this case, XYZ raised 5 lakh rupees by issuing 50,000 shares, which is half of its total authorized share capital. Therefore, issued capital would always be less than the authorized share capital since it makes for that part of the shares which have been issued by the company of the total number of shares it is authorized to issue. To sum up, issued capital means that part of the authorized share capital which has been issued by the company. Now, let's see the meaning of subscribed capital, which is given under Section 2, Clause 86, which says that subscribed capital means such part of the capital which is for the time being subscribed by the members of a company. So, in continuation of the previous example, where XYZ Private Limited company issued 50,000 shares of face value of rupees 10 each, and where the issued capital value is equivalent to 5 lakh rupees. Now we can see in the flowchart that shareholder A subscribed to 10,000 shares, shareholder B subscribed to 20,000 shares, and shareholder C subscribed to 15,000 shares, and no one subscribed to the remaining 5,000 shares. This means that the total subscribed capital is 45,000 shares, which makes for 4.5 lakh rupees. So, subscribed capital means essentially the part of the issued capital which is subscribed by the shareholders. and the part of the issued capital which is not subscribed is called the unsubscribed capital. Therefore, in this case, the unsubscribed capital would be equal to 5,000 shares, which is equivalent to rupees 50,000 worth of capital. Now, let's see the meaning of called up capital, which is given under Section 2, Clause 15 of the Companies Act 2013. It says, called up capital means such part of the capital which has been called for payment. So again, in continuation of the above example, let's say XYZ company issued 45,000 shares of face value of rupees 10 each. However, the company can decide how much money they want the shareholders to pay on each share depending upon their immediate capital requirements. So for instance, XYZ can ask all the shareholders to pay rupees 2 at the time of submitting the share application form, then probably ask them to pay rupees 2 again at the time of share allotment, and pay rupees 3 as the first call amount and the remaining rupees 3 as the final call amount later on. This can be one way in which the company may ask the shareholder to pay towards his liability by making a call for payment at different stages. Remember that offer for shares are made on application forms supplied by the company. So the company offers its shares to potential investors who then have to submit the application form, and then the company decides if it wants to allot the shares to the potential investors or not. When a share application is accepted by the company, it amounts to an allotment of share. Let's take another example. Say XYZ decides to ask the shareholders to pay rupees 5 at the time of share allotment. Then the total called up capital would be 5 multiplied by 45,000 shares, which is equivalent to 2,25,000. So 2,25,000 would be the called up capital, which is a part of the issued capital, where the issued capital was 4,50,000. This inadvertently also means that the total uncalled capital is 2,25,000. How did we arrive at 2,25,000 as called up capital? It's because remember that a total of 45,000 shares were subscribed together by shareholders A, B and C. So by asking the 3 shareholders to pay rupees 5 for each subscribed share, the company is basically calling for 50% of the face value of each share. So the total called up capital would be 45,000 shares multiplied by 5, which equals to 2,25,000. Finally, let's see the definition of paid up share capital, which is given under Section 2, Clause 64 of the Companies Act 2013, and it says, paid up share capital or share capital paid up means such aggregate amount of money credited as paid up as is equivalent to the amount received as paid up in respect of shares issued, and also includes any amount credited as paid up in respect of the shares of the company, but does not include any other amount received in respect of such shares by whatever name called. Paid up share capital is essentially the amount of money a company has been paid on the shares which have been issued by the company to the shareholders. So as seen in the above example where XYZ company called up rupees 5 on each share, the total paid up share capital would amount to rupees 2,25,000. How? Because shareholder A would pay rupees 50,000 since he is holding 10,000 shares. Similarly, shareholder B would pay rupees 1 lakh rupees since he is holding 20,000 shares, and finally shareholder C would pay rupees 75,000 since he is holding 15,000 shares. Thus, the total paid up share capital would be 2,25,000, which is the amount which is paid by the shareholders towards the call amount and credited to the company. So basically, paid up share capital is the total amount which is received by the company from the shareholders who have subscribed to the shares of the company. So if we see the hierarchy, we can see that the first comes the authorized share capital, then comes the issued capital, then the subscribed capital, then the called up capital, and finally the paid up share capital. This also means that the paid up share capital would never exceed the called up capital. Similarly, the called up capital cannot be more than the subscribed capital, and subscribed capital cannot be more than the issued capital. And finally, the issued capital cannot be more than the authorized share capital of the company. With this, we have covered 18 of the 94 definitions given under Section 2 of the Companies Act 2013, and we now draw curtains on Section 2. We will cover the remaining definitions and terms as and when we tackle them in the relevant sections of the Companies Act 2013 where they have been used. That's all from this video. Hit us up in the comment section if you have any queries, or write to us at thecaffeinatedcorporatelawyer@gmail.com to give us your feedback. Follow our Instagram page to get some more exciting content, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to study all the sections with us. We will see you guys in the next one. Thanks.